Hi, all, and welcome to another episode of Brewing E-commerce. And my guest today is something like we all struggle to find in an e-commerce world that we live in is something I call it deal discovery. And what I mean by that is when I look at people, when I follow people, get really inspired by their content, I realized that there was a bunch of really good guys that I look up to. They were liking and commenting on this guy's content, right? That's exactly how I discovered Ho. So, Ho, welcome to the
Thank you,
podcast,
man.
and I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you, man. I know we had a kind of pre-conversation before this, and it was very intriguing what you guys are up to. How do you pronounce the company name again? Is it
Ui.
Kui?
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool stuff. Thank you for reaching out.
No, so yeah, so guys, this with this prelude, I think everybody should who goes through this ordeal with me for about 30-40 minutes or whatever should check out Ho's profile on LinkedIn. He works with some really cool brands as well. We had a discussion where he was trying to tell me a lot of things, and I said, Hope, stop it. Let's make an episode about this. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot, gaining a lot from all you've done, Ho. So you should get up for
Yep,
it.
let's go on. Yeah, I'm open to whatever we want to talk about.
Super. So just to kickstart, Ho, I'd like to kind of introduce yourself, a little bit about work, etc.
Yep.
And sometimes I do question myself as well. How the heck did I land myself in e-commerce? So I would like to understand your
Oh, that's
moment
a
as
cool
well.
question. That's a cool question. Yeah. So my name is Hov. Hovhannes for the full name is Hovhannes, but Hov is for short, easier for people. I've been in e-commerce for 7 years or so now. I've been doing A/B testing before that. I was at a lead generation company before this one, designing landing pages, mostly getting phone and email leads. I got into e-commerce just because I was looking for the next job, basically from A/B testing. I did a bunch of A/B tests, like I said, for as a very limited funnel. It was just basically put your email here, put your phone number, and after a year or so of doing it, I learned a lot from the company. Centerfield was the company that I was at. They're one of the largest, lead generation companies in the country. Learned a lot in a year and a half. Did maybe one or two tests a day. Like we had that much kind of
Wow.
traffic well, yeah. So they were working with giant brands that had the traffic to do that and multiple verticals. We had kind of the traffic to learn from. I'm very grateful for that kind of opportunity because, from the get go, in my at least like career, I was able to do a ton of tests and get, things right away. Because I started doing small, medium-sized business kind of work, but you never know. You put something out there, you don't really know if it's doing better or not. You kind of hope for the best type of thing. But this was an eye opener for me getting into A/B testing, and then I just wanted to do something a little bit more complex because things were as you do 1 to 2 lead generation tests a day over a year and a half, like it becomes kind of you can't do much more about that. You've kind of milked everything you can from a site's or a visitor's kind of experience. And so, I just looked around El Segundo. I was in California at the time, and just found this company called 310 Nutrition, which does shakes, supplements, and they're on Shopify. It was very early on. It was 2017, I think, January or so,
Mhm.
2017. So they had just moved into Shopify very early into the Shopify ecosystem. For the next 6 years, I stayed with the company. Went
Yes.
from developer, designer to kind of leading the dev team there, and then just the culture was flat enough where I just started taking on random things, including media buying at one point. So I just like learned whatever every corner of e-commerce, at least on the front end. I never got into the finances, although at the end of it, I was doing some P&L management. But yeah, I got into e-commerce for with 310 Nutrition really deep, and yeah, I ended up being VP of e-commerce before I left, and started. I shouldn't say started. I joined my wife. She started a consultancy about a couple of years ago called The Growth Chef. She does marketing, acquisition, consulting. She's been at Textile, which owns FabX, Just Fab. She was head of acquisition there, and then head of acquisition at Skims as well, Kim Kardashian's brand. So she had a lot of experience on the marketing side, and we kind of learned from a lot of conversations together. But yeah, I joined her maybe 6 months ago, doing consulting for different brands, focusing on CRO. For some brands, Electro Classic, I'm kind of acting as like a interim e-commerce manager while we get their team kind of built out and yeah, and going. But for most brands, I do CRO work programs. Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of big names that you kind of bring about there. And see, if I had to kind of summarize this in like a couple of sentences, I would say that your A/B testing data background was the one that was just setting the foundation for the whole CRO job, right?
I think so. Yeah, and just being having 310 be also like the traffic helps, right? Like so you could refine your skills at a brand, but if the brand is small and you don't get many learnings,
Yeah.
you don't really have that confidence that like, hey, I've seen this work firsthand, and that confidence goes a long way in building hypotheses for tests as well. So really grateful for my experience at 310 as well. I was able to try a lot of things. There was no one basically to stop me. Like the owner was very like not risk averse basically, so he would take big risks. So it kind of fit into a culture of just like trying anything type of thing.
Yeah, but tests are tests, right? There's always a learning from the test, and I think that's how we all need to think about the whole
Yeah,
experiment.
as long as you have a strong hypothesis. This is what I've learned. If you don't have a
Sure.
strong hypothesis, you just like testing. You might not know why it won or lost. You just kind of go with it, and that's fine too. You don't necessarily have to have a strong hypothesis. You're just trying different features. But just from experience, like the bigger the test experience, like how much of a breadth it goes. It's not just like one feature on the site. The more pages and more of experience you touch, the one like the likelihood of you failing and winning are a lot higher, or at least like the magnitude of your win or your loss. Like it could go like in an extreme way. But that's what I've been recently starting to do as well. We're around Black Friday, Cyber Monday month now.
Yeah.
The last week has been just like all nighters of getting tests that are not just like a banner on the homepage type of test. It's just like banner deals on the product
Mm.
page, following to the
Yeah.
cart, like an experience that actually follows the user. And those have been getting the biggest wins that I've seen versus like there's a place for both. There's a place for evergreen tests that, once
Sure.
the sale is over. But for certain size brands, like a Black Friday type of thing, event, if you're not testing on your site, you're very much losing out. And again, like the experience might not be around after the sale ends because you're just
Yeah.
doing it for that period. But if you could get a win in just that period, I think a lot of people are already familiar with testing email subject lines during their sales, right?
Sure.
And taking that mentality, why most people that I've seen, most brands, they don't even touch their site on Black Friday. They just put one banner up and that's their sale, and they kind of almost have a code freeze for the most volatile. Like I understand why they do it.
I
I talked to a
understand.
brand. I'm
Yeah.
like, they're like, we don't want to test, and we don't want to keep things steady for Black Friday. And I'm thinking, this is the time to
Good time.
do
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
test. So I'm also really lucky that two of the brands, like eight figure brands, that have a lot of traffic. They trusted the last week to me to like, okay, just get a new experience out.
Nice.
And recently launched that a few days ago for one big brand, and then this morning for another one.
Which is rare. I have to say, the kind of figures that you're talking about, this is really rare that the brands are ready to do it. So you must have
Yeah.
done some magic
Well,
wand convincing there, or
that's the thing. It's like I didn't. I went with the easiest path. Like those two brands are the ones that are more tactical and less. They don't have a giant creative team that has
yeah.
processes, and it'll take a long time. Like no offense to those type of brands. It's just
No, of course, yeah.
it depends
It's
on the
different.
brand.
Yeah,
It
exactly. Yeah,
depends on the brand. Some brands really care about every single pixel. Some brands just, okay, get something out and it looks good. It's great. Like you don't have a lot of approval. So look, those two, I was able to just go rogue for a week and get something out. But I'm trying on the other brands now to just like plant the seed. Like, hey, I've seen it work here. Can you guys
yeah. You should try it
allow me
too.
to test?
Yeah. Yeah, and just like 3 days back, there was one brand in the UK, and the website wasn't working for like 5 minutes, and all over feeds and social media. How can you do this? And the month November started, and things like that. It's not
Yeah,
even the peak 5 days yet, but
yeah,
um, I understand brands are really scared, and where we come from the whole
yeah,
Shopify experience. I think it's been a month now that people have already started slowing down, trying out new things, etc.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
I do agree with like new applications,
sure.
new things into their tech stack. I would agree. Like, don't touch that
Yeah,
during this time. Like at True Classic, we had an opportunity to go live. I think we're gonna pause this. It's like we have personalization, this
yeah,
whole like personalization suite ready to go, but it's such a all like different experience that it's not necessarily an A/B test either. And we're building out a new partnership. Like, I wouldn't recommend creating new partnerships or
yeah.
apps during this time, but doing a test that is just contained. I think that's the key, and to be able to do it in a way where you could roll back features. Like, I've been on the operations side of it, being a developer. Like,
The
you
yeah,
you really need to decouple your test and default experience. So like, if
sure.
it doesn't win, you're not left with a bunch of code on the theme, and you can revert back easily. So just having separate. This is getting into the details of Shopify, but getting separate snippets, separate logic that can just be turned off. I think that's also important to mitigate kind of the fear of trying new things.
Very interesting points. I think the brands kind of need to get a little logical and practical about it. That
Yeah,
on an average, I believe that visitors are far more number of times on your store if their intent is somewhere around buying your product at the time of this periods. Every time they come, they should feel that there is something going on, but
yeah,
not at the risk of things not working. So I think you very nicely put it, saying that the core default experience needs to be something else, and if it doesn't work, just turn it off.
right. Yeah, and the hand holding, like, you see it in retail really easily, right? Because in retail, it's easy to put up a storefront banner, and then you come in,
True.
all the tags are 50% off. Like, I'm trying to take that retail experience into online. So if you
Absolutely.
have a Black Friday, like, get your banner there, and then put in every single collection page, put your tags there. This is Black
Yeah,
Friday. This is a special. Put a timer there if there's urgency. On the product page, hand hold. If it's a discount code, put the discount code there. You're going to get this discount code. If it's hard marked, then at least say like, this is a limited time deal. Have a link back to your collection page that has all the other deals on the cart page. Keep pushing them. So like, having that experience that you just walk into a store and it's all dressed up into a sale. That's what
yeah.
I'm trying to bring into sites.
So do you think that in this whole online game, we are trying to mimic the entire retail experience?
Not the entire one, I would say, because the one thing that you wouldn't want to maybe do, that I've seen some implementations of it, they're kind of wonky, is the salesperson walking in, right? Like, like, I wouldn't recreate that one necessarily, or at least I would be careful with doing it. And the manifestations of that salesperson walking in saying, "How can I help you?" has always been this, like, the Microsoft Word clippy type of
Yeah, the
situation
chatbot
where
coming in. Yeah,
you have the
yeah,
chatbot, like,
yeah.
and it's annoying. But if there was some sort of like consensual way to like get into that
Sure.
experience, probably would be good. That might be a quiz or some sort of experience, but I haven't seen some like. Other than that, I think most things in retail you could probably like, it just makes sense because like, when someone thinks in person,
Yeah,
they are doing personalization, right? Like,
yeah,
if you're a salesperson coming in with somebody that's, you could tell right away. I haven't worked in sales, but like in a retail, but I would imagine somebody walks in, I'm gonna judge in terms of
yeah,
what their intent is. Like, are they looking for things or just wandering? Do they have a bunch of kids around? Like, what is their focus level? So having somehow being able to match that visual kind of, or and also verbal, talking to somebody like, hey, are you just browsing today versus you're ready to buy, getting that intent somehow into a site, or like, being able to read that before when a user lands. That's, I think, a pretty novel problem to try to solve.
yeah,
Then you don't treat everybody the same. Like, I've seen a lot of kind of personalization things around, like personalization software around, and it's mostly around changing the collection page or changing how the search results show up or the upsells, which all in their own right are doing the right thing. But I think
Yeah.
they're very uh, in a bubble where
Yeah.
players like Rebuy, which are great apps, they'll test within a widget or on the checkout upsells, which is great. Like doing it there is awesome, but it's not connected to the full site experience yet because
Yeah.
like granted, it's not, it's more complex, like being able to do in Rebuy's example or different apps that do these kind of widgets, they can at least like say, okay, put this snippet in there and we're going to control this experience and we're going to do a very good job of testing that experience,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily tied to anything else um, across the site. So I haven't seen that kind of like one solution that either does it for you completely, like in terms of signal of intent and then doing something visual, or just like if it's just a developer backend thing where like it gives you an intent number or something that will you can then change content on the site. So yeah, I'm curious what you guys are kind of like
Yeah.
leading
Yeah.
to.
No.
Yeah, because it seems
Yeah.
like you're tackling a very cool problem, but it's complex. Yeah.
No, it is, and a lot of what you're saying is something that we built, but this podcast kind of not about that. But I know where you're coming from, and that's where I'm going to head the my very important questions in CRO bit. But the way we believe it, every visitor is actually trying to tell you what they want. You know, the thing is so
Okay.
hard for people to figure out because the tech wasn't available, and the entire focus has always been around bringing traffic.
Uh-huh.
That's how the entire internet works and the whole bigger companies, etc. And funny enough, Mo, that when I tell you more and more about this, is conversion rate as a number hasn't changed in over a decade because of this reason that everybody assumes a visitor coming to your store is ready to buy, but that's not the
Mhm.
case, right? So,
Right.
and visitor coming to your store, one of the biggest topics in CRO, and I'd love to hear your take about this is yes, pop-ups.
Mhm.
What do you think about pop-ups? If they work, they don't work, and
Yeah.
what would be your advice for brands to implement, and what the kind of hypothesis
Yeah.
and strategy behind it, please?
Yeah, no, I'm seeing a lot of changes in pop-ups. There's a lot of like newer companies that are coming out, but the thing is like that I've seen brands fall into is they put all of them together, and then you have just pop-up mania on your site from welcome to exit intent. Which the only pop-up that I would say this kind of in summary, like the only pop-up that I can totally say works is a welcome pop-up of some sort that either gives discount. I've seen cashback recently, or put somebody in an experience that is a value add. It's not necessarily a discount, but might be getting a personalized X or whatever personalized shopping experience. Exit intents, I haven't seen them be accurate, honestly. Like desktop maybe, but every mobile kind of definition or yeah implementation of an exit intent has been user scrolls super fast up where I
Yeah,
get a pop up.
very shifty. Yeah,
So I just wouldn't trust that. And like in terms of speaking about reading intent, that's probably like the worst, the most incorrect way to read intent is somebody scrolling really fast and then you're showing an exit intent. So in those cases, like they might have an incremental value to them, but they're and here's the thing: like I've seen it hard to test as well for brands. There's people okay for testing actual pop-ups to see if it adds incremental value. Because if you look at just the opt-in rate, you're going to get fooled because you don't necessarily like it's always going to be a net positive of opt-in rates showing
yeah.
a pop-up versus not showing. Now, the big players, Klaviyo being one of them, or Klaviyo, I always say Klaviyo because it's easier to pronounce for me. But they have A/B testing tools, but they only A/B test showing versus showing something else, which is
Something else. Yeah,
okay. You're going to increase your opt-in rates. That's
yeah.
cool. I've seen some cool implementations of asking questions before having a multi-step, like do you want this offer, and not just have the email field. I've seen improvements there, but to actually test showing versus not showing, it's not possible within Klaviyo. So for some brands that have at least like the ability to put these resources to rebuild them, we rebuild the pop up within just coding it out. Then you have to do like a little Klaviyo integration. If they have a different SMS provider that's not Klaviyo, Postgres stuff, you have to do another API call there
Yeah,
to try to get them into the right segment. So like that's a hurdle. It's not undoable. It's not impossible, but it's a hurdle to recode the pop up into your. But then you
mm,
also lose the customer targeting that Klaviyo does, because Klaviyo knows a little bit more about the customer than a brand might be able to hard code a cookie for, right?
sure.
Versus like the Klaviyo click or whatnot, or email click for other providers. So I see brands being stuck in kind of like no man's land, where it's like you could either test opt-in rates, which is going to give you great positive results, but you don't actually know if it's incremental conversion revenue. And then the ones that do go the route of doing it themselves, it's like, okay, now you're becoming a development company, where it's like you have to spend resources to develop versus just do things out of the box with a UI or whatnot, which is better because it's a marketing thing. So yeah, that's the lay of the land I've seen pop-ups. In terms of the ones that work, it's welcome, but again, it's hard to right now test for incrementality of those welcome pop-ups either.
And what's your take on attribution when you talk about incrementality there? And this is one of the biggest challenge of CRO guys as well, right? That I was already making $100, I got another 110. Is this 10 incremental? Or the other way to look at it is, the $100 and suddenly my traffic dropped, and the revenue is 90 now, but out of the
Yeah.
90 I still contributed 10, but that does not seen. So how do you address attribution?
Are you talking about like after a test ends, or like overall, I guess, conversion numbers?
Overall against conversion numbers, because test wise, there's still a hypothesis and there's still some things that you can kind of go and talk about.
Yeah.
But like, what I want to know is, and again, I'm coming here because I know you're associated with Nordbeam, and there are other companies. So there are two schools of thoughts here that I know understand. Is one, people want to fight attribution. No, I want to know last click, and I want to know this is Facebook or this is
Yeah,
my.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, in
yeah,
terms of like at least tests, like the attribution to a winning variant is a little bit easier than like a Northbeam or a Triple Whale kind of figuring out. Because like I did acquisition, like leading acquisition at 310 for a while, and we used Little Data at first, which is a small like app that you tap onto Google Analytics, and it tells you, like, it stitches Shopify customer data on the back end, so
yeah,
you can see like new customer ROAS. And then we graduated into Northbeam. I am affiliated with investor in Northbeam, but yeah, like both
nice.
Triple and Northbeam do a great job. So like that attribution is a little more like I guess controversial, where it's like it's mostly about perspective. To me, like one attribution versus another model, at least in media buying, it's almost like preference, where we operated with Northbeam's kind of basic kind of splitting of the attribution, but it's not correct. There's no objective, at least from my experience,
Yeah,
objective correct
agree.
attribution model. You just have to like pick one and go with it, and make sure it's fair to like newer channels, so it's not totally handicapping newer channels, because then you'll never launch them. But as long as you're directionally like improving within the inaccurate numbers, you're still going to improve, even if your attributions are not perfect. As long as you're improving those numbers within the tracking software, should be fine. But for conversion rate, like for a pop-up, for example, you would at least want to have, put people into the test that have seen the pop-up, and not necessarily everyone, or like would have seen the pop-up. So
Right.
you kind of at least want to be like this one's a cool example, because you have so many people that bounce that if you include them in the test, you're just going to dilute the test. Let's say you have a pop-up that comes up after 3 seconds. If 90% of your traffic doesn't make it to 3 seconds, now you're diluting your test with a bunch of users that wouldn't have gotten the experience one way or another. So if I were to do a pop-up test, I would at least wait 3 seconds before putting somebody into even the default, or counting them into the default. So at least there you can say, okay, seeing the pop-up actually did something versus seeing noise in the system. And in terms of like going live after a test wins, let's say, how to
Mhm.
check up on it. The most concrete way I've seen it is if we're doing, let's say, an average order value test, or some sort of like product mix test, which usually that's what AOV is. Is you have some sort of upsell or some higher premium version of your product, or you're adding on more products. Is to export those line items within the A/B testing software. So once you finish the test, like are you selling in relation more of
Okay.
this versus another? All things considered equal. Like if you're not totally changing the product page traffic. So yeah, attribution is a little bit easier, at least on the test side. But on media, like I said, you don't necessarily have a true
Yeah.
thing.
And like you just said, it's just a, I would say, a combination of a gazillion things happening together, right? The traffic, the page, the source, the time, the
Yeah,
device. It's just
yeah,
insane, and there are so many things like newer apps like us, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
I think we're getting close though as an industry. Like I'm talking to a few vendors. I'll keep their names private because I think they're kind of working on these under wraps. But for me, the ultimate goal or the ultimate kind of view of a site's health is one, do server side A/B testing, like true server side, not just server side tracking of an order coming into Shopify via webhook, but server side testing where you're not rendering both versions of the HTML and then hiding showing one thing. Like that's usually the test now. You're either splitting the traffic or you have, you know, like headphone A and headphone B, and then you're hiding this one, and then you're
yeah,
saying, okay, version like do this one. Then you have all
yes.
the content of this guy just
Get it up
loading
there,
up the page, and vice versa.
right?
So like doing server side rendering for the test is, I think, the ultimate goal. Some people are working on that, which is great. And the second one is once you have that, once you have server side like event tracking, so from add to carts to purchases and everything, now you can take those on a graph, and like Shopify does an okay job with their online store conversion rate report, but it's kind of lacking. You have to export it to even see
Yeah,
the funnel steps
it's
if there's
far
a
away.
drop off within the funnels.
Yeah,
Breaking it down by channels and stuff, it's kind of hard. So what I'm trying to get at is my view that I think some people are working on is server side testing, server side tracking of events, overlaid with test start, end dates, and locations.
yeah,
But I'm seeing some details that I have to manually confirm
yeah,
that like would be great in the software. So if I start a test yesterday, what locations did it touch? Okay, did those locations get affected in terms of value conversion rate?
oh wow,
And when did it end? So like add those data points on a freaking graph so I can say like this is when it started and ended, and overlay it with the overall conversion rate or the health of the site, and not just conversion rate, but like KPIs and like smaller goals as well. So I'm trying to see like who's going to build that and see if I can at least influence it. But I think that will be the holy grail of doing it. Because right now I'm just kind of exporting things from one software, exporting things from Shopify, trying to see if they're talking to each other, pushing with segments
yeah,
into GA4, which there's a slight difference there as well. Things are kind of
exactly.
fragmented, which
Yeah,
but there are some players, like I said, in the ecosystem that are positioned in a way where they could do all of it at the same
nice.
time and give like a health alert system as well. Yeah, that's a whole separate topic of
Oh,
alerting,
I know,
like
yeah, I know. But it's
things going off. But like we waste so much time trying to hunt down problems, like when things happen, like especially in media. And then you're doing a QA on the site, you're doing QA on your tests. Then you're okay. Anything else go wrong? Like you should try and like chase after something that I think could have been caught live. And then if you catch it live with all the correlation, like I said, of start, end dates, and test. I mean that's just the beginning. If you start doing change log of dev as well, would be great. Yeah,
this super interesting. Oh, I think getting a lot of perspective from really eating, sleeping, drinking data, kind of a thing, right? But
yeah,
tell me this. I know the brands that you mentioned are really big ones, right? So they have larger teams, they have a lot of traffic, they have a lot of money, a lot of data.
yeah.
But is CRO for a guy who's making less than 50,000 or who's making 500,000 a month very different in terms of strategies, principles?
Yeah, yeah. Like one, you can't test as much. Obviously, that's kind of obvious that everybody knows. Like the number of tests that you do is directly correlated with the traffic that you have. So if somebody's making, let's say, 500K a month, that's pretty decent. You could still do. I would focus on offer landing page tests, like mostly on the media side. So you, getting your acquisition kind of figured out. If you don't have the scale of 1+ million, I guess, a month, then like most likely your acquisition is kind of the the, the
Doing,
roadblock.
yeah.
So doing more bigger changes, definitely. So landing pages and offers, I think, would be more beneficial for those sizes. You could throw up tests and let them run a little bit longer, but once tests like run longer than a month or so, they get kind of messed up with either seasonality or different tests, like different sales starting and stopping. So if you have a test running and then there's a sale that starts midway, that'll screw up a test. So you don't necessarily want it to go long enough where there are bigger variables into play, and that's the main challenge with a smaller store. But yeah, for those, I would focus on bigger changes, whether it be like if you're going to do an A/B test, do a large one, do an entire page, split URL type of thing, versus a small feature. So yeah, the smaller the brand, or at least the revenue, the bigger tests you have to do. But now I'm getting comfortable enough, like I said, where I'm doing bigger tests on bigger brands too, and that seems to be like I rather do that. It feels like the riskier and funner move for for things, and this season of sales have been great for that.
Oh, great. What would be, in your opinion, the three most underrated CRO tips for Shopify Plus brands?
The three most underrated CRO tips. Right now, I would say my number one is data validation. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come up with three, but number one is data validation of your testing software. So I've seen a ton of cases where the number of orders you get into your software, and this is like a big problem that I think most brands just kind of like gloss over, where they'll onboard a A/B testing software, and maybe 70% of the orders actually get into the software. So now you're basically having a 30% hold on your
Yeah,
test that isn't on purpose. It's not the end of the world, but now, okay, your tests have to run longer because now you have a 30% hold on your audience. You don't know how those people are going to behave. There's going to be problems like B2B, where B2B is becoming a blended store for some Shopify stores. Well, if your B2B customer comes in and makes a $3,000 order on your $100 AOV store, now you have you have to get those. So for those, it's you do it, getting into statistics, but you get into your average order value. You try to either exclude B2B or exclude really big or really
yeah,
small purchases.
true.
So that'll depend on your kind of standard
Business
deviation.
stuff,
I've
yeah.
seen mostly like three standard deviations. You exclude them. So one is data validation, making sure your orders are getting in, the orders are getting in are accurate to the revenue, and they're not messing up your tests. Um, I would say, I don't know if I'm going to come up with two and three there,
Yeah,
but
yeah. No, no,
for tips, yeah.
yeah,
For me, it's like you said, like it's hard to do standalone, like
yeah,
just umbrella tips to people. The episodes I do on LinkedIn where I'm doing before and afters, they're very surface level. Like they're just to introduce a conversation, to start a conversation. Those things I spend maybe 20 minutes on, like really quickly doing some changes with like
yeah,
a hypothesis. But I guess, yeah, I guess from just talking about it, number two would be like spend more time on planning your tests. One thing I've seen both agencies and kind of brands do is take one feature and just slap it onto their website, and just hope it works. And in some cases, like there's going to be one cool feature, like a buy now button or some Instagram style buttons on the homepage that work for everybody and improve a little bit for everybody. But what I've seen is, and there's this like thing to rush into testing and get as much out. That's kind of a prevailing kind of thought process. So, but I would say if you spend more time thinking about something, it's just a law of nature that you're just going to make a better product.
yeah,
So if you have a test idea, that's great. Like don't rush into from design to development immediately. I saw a giant brand do that where it's like marketing has an idea and developers immediately develop it and that's the test. I'm like, What about the middle? What about the UX? Like there's such a thing as overthinking or like over designing something or over engineering it, but there's a curve. Like don't give up on the middle S curve. Spend a little bit more time until okay, you're getting into diminishing returns in your idea, but spend more time thinking about the experience. Try to get more of a breadth experience, like I said, like have it be multiple touch points if it is. Um, think about it as a human coming to you, and how would you treat them, and how would you change their experience.
Absolutely.
So that would be it. I really can't come up with number three right
No,
now.
no,
If
no,
I keep
no.
talking, I might.
Yeah.
But those two, data validation
Yeah.
and think more about your tests.
Yeah.
Think deeper and spend more time. At least experimenting with different
Sure.
variations of your hypothesis. Because
Yeah.
hypothesis is one thing, the actual implementation is another thing most of the time. So usually I've seen people just shortcut themselves where they don't go into more options. They immediately see one good one and they say, let's do that one, versus can you give me at least five or three? Like don't do it out of practice just because to create different variations, but usually this is just in practice of the designer. Like
Sure.
if I'm speaking as a designer,
Yeah.
if I go in there, it's like I'm just going to branch out to three extreme ideas, and we'll see which one feels better, that type of thing. So
Yeah.
doing that a little bit more, and then going deeper into having different variations. It's hard when you have a rush of the day to day. I have the luxury of being a consultant slash contractor now, where I have no rush, and I'm actually doing more work than
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did when I was
Absolutely.
having
Because you're
a
laser
company.
focused as well. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I again, like, I also have a child now, which changed everything for me personally. It's
Yeah.
like if I'm not doing effective work in the 15 minutes or so I get in front
Exactly.
of the computer, it's
Yeah.
a waste of time. So I think that also adds on or helps out. But yeah, like I don't have the I guess the inner politics of brands, which I've seen, like which is almost inevitable. It's not necessarily like one brand is or not, but it's just inevitable. You get that many team members, you just have more variables of things moving slower. So I have the luxury of coming in and saying like, okay, let's
Yeah.
do this.
That's
Sometimes I move a little bit too, yeah. Sometimes I do a little bit too rash, like I go rogue. But in some brands, like it takes time for them to integrate
absolutely.
and get into the flow.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Okay. I'm loving this. You're somehow bringing this, all these conversations with a very different perspective. So I'm thoroughly enjoying this. But I have to ask one more question, and then we'll
yeah,
try to wrap this up. Is a lot of what you're saying is all about data, right? And trying to get the most important validate data and then using it for different kind of visitors and things like that is a very complex job, as you were trying to explain, right?
yeah.
Do you think AI is changing that in some way, or is it promising to go and help the job and have a better performance in the coming years?
Yeah. I've seen some great implementations of AI in e-commerce space, at least. The best implementation of AI I've seen, or at least machine learning. I wouldn't totally say like ChatGPT level AI, but like post-purchase upsells were this didn't used to be a fact a few years ago, where if you were doing an upsell, I saw that it was better to manually pick products versus let some sort of machine learning take the reins and pick the right products for somebody. But recently, I've started to see okay, they're actually taking in more data points of either browsing, purchasing, and combining that either with Shopify's recommendation API, which does have some machine learning in there. So like that's one great implementation I've seen. It's mostly just upsells and recommendations within stores. But personalization beyond an upsell widget or so, to me, it's kind of like wild wild west at this point, where it's like trusting the system type. You have to have a little bit of trust in whatever system you're implementing or saying, okay, you guys drive in terms of putting different banners, putting different pop-ups, like dress up our site however you wish, and
Yeah.
there's might be a lot of combinations at this point. That one, I think, like the industry is not yet totally embraced, maybe because the tools haven't been sophisticated
Well,
enough
and yeah,
yet.
yeah,
But once they will, and maybe next year or so, I think more trust will come into personalization. Right now, sale banners, homepage thing, like very simple personalization things. Those things are usually just hard coded right now. The most things you can do with Shopify is if they're a customer or not. Like who's logging in and browsing on the Shopify site logged in? Not many, unless you have an app. So like the personalization is limited right now, just out of the box Shopify. And AI, like I said, at least in the upsell space,
Yeah,
has last like few years have become enough where okay, yeah, I'm seeing the actual revenue per visitor for an AI driven upsell do better than me going and handpicking a few products, right? And
absolutely. Yeah,
saying this is
yeah,
going to be good for everybody. Because what was happening was my picking of popular things is going to be on average better than everything.
yeah,
But now, since the AI now can figure out the baseline that works for everybody,
yeah,
and then starts picking incremental winners, then that's when you have like over time a lift in revenue per visitor. I didn't see that before. It was just like a bunch of random tries, and
yeah,
it's not the right offer. So if that sophistication can come into like price elasticity, I've seen that where like price testing.
yeah,
IntelliGems as an app like does price testing. They've been doing it for a long time, but it's still like user defined.
yeah,
Like test this price versus this price versus implicit price testing, which is this offer versus this offer, 20% off to this customer, 30% off
yeah,
this customer, 50% that. It's interesting that the whole personalization of offers. There's something that I think maybe we haven't seen yet, is that now it's very inconsistent in terms of offers. So if a brand has a lot of community, which at 310 Nutrition we had an extremely active community
mm,
in Facebook, like not just a ambiguous community of customers, but
yeah.
on Facebook we had 500,000 or so
Wow.
people in there talking about every little thing that we did. So we couldn't do anything in private. So if
You
we
know,
test 20% versus 30%, people are like, I got 30%. Somebody will say, I got 20%. Why is that? So there's some still like that needs to be taken into account, I think, in some cases for brands that have a lot of connection to their customers. Yeah, that's the only thing that were like hyper personalization or hyper offers might seem a little weird, right? That's different than going back to our retail conversation.
yeah,
Somebody coming in, you could have a different offers to them because you're just
sure,
speaking one on one.
sure.
But once it's on the site, you're speaking
Sure.
into a kind of
But that
megaphone,
also
which
build a lot of data, right? Hope, because you know if the guy's coming back or what he bought last time or things like that.
right,
Because at the end, the data
right.
is very crucial part of
Yeah,
it.
as long as you say like this offer is for you,
Yes.
that's better.
Yeah.
Versus like this site is having this sale versus this site. Okay, now this mixed messaging. I can see that. If you have some sort of personalized, going back to our Microsoft Word Clippy, if you have your Clippy or Cooey, right? Like if you have that guy there
Yeah.
telling you, I guess like walking you through the journey, I
Yeah.
think that's the coolest
Yeah.
way of
Yeah.
doing it.
Like we with the way we look at discounts is right having different percentage numbers to different intents, right?
Yeah,
So as a medium guy, you give them a higher, but if the guy is coming back again and again, then you don't have to go and sell yourself that hard, and again, discounts are marked holy grails and stuff like that. So there are,
yeah,
yeah, different implementations of that. So yeah, okay, this is really really cool. How I'm actually you brought out a very different subset of those questions and thoughts that which some of them I'm going to use in the business for sure. I can already
for
think of a
sure.
few
I want to
KPIs.
talk to you about it too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like what you're doing for like cold traffic, or at least like traffic just coming in and having offers. I believe that that's the first problem to solve, and you're solving it. And
Yeah,
I think some subsequent maybe things to think about. I'm not sure if this is going to be the direction of it or not, but um, that personalization that is also personal, not just like
yes,
it needs some sort of see that this is the thing. It needs some sort of avatar. Is it AI? Is it like we're in the uncanny valley? Is it an AI animation that's going to be weird right now, but at one point maybe it's not weird.
yeah,
Like when that becomes a little bit more real, speaking of XAI Grok, I still haven't used it. I'm on the waiting list. I'm hoping for it. Like that's the more personal AI that has empathy. It
absolutely,
has all these other variables built in, which can be personalized. So, like, can you build something on top of Grok 1.0 or 2.0 or
yeah,
whatnot that has the empathy for the person that's coming back. Hey, you haven't been here for a month. Like, how are things been? Like, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
give some sort. Yeah, so like that's exciting for me.
Yeah, and the way you put it is, it's so nice because you're talking about the whole human angle, and then that comes along with data and the CRO. So,
Yeah,
it was a very nice combination of all
hey
different
man,
topics, and it
thank
was
you, man.
really my pleasure to host you. A lot of learnings, a lot of tests, and hopefully all towards good results that we can learn and continue going from. Thank you so
Good
much.
results either way. Win or lose, it's fun
I,
learning.
yeah,
Thank you for this
thank
conversation,
you
man.
for this, and really appreciate your time. Looking forward to doing this again with you sometime soon.
Thank you, man. Take care.